So welcome to another episode of Suburban Bourbon. This is last time I think we were together. We were in Youngstown, Ohio, with former boxing champion Boom Boom Mancini. And today we are at 19300 Detroit Road in Rocky River at
Sakana Sushi Restaurant.
The best place on earth.
Absolutely.
And with us today is Kristen and Juan, and we're going to talk a little bit about the variety of whiskeys. We're going to take a little bit of a turn today. I mean, certainly this is a bourbon show, but all bourbon is whiskey. Not all whiskey is bourbon, as we've said in the past. And we're going to taste a lot of Japanese whiskeys, which, Joe, you did some research on it. Maybe talk a little bit about the taste that we're hoping to expect.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna a lot of similarities to Scotch, as we'll discuss. So, I mean, I think this is definitely a departure from what we normally have, but definitely looking forward to trying some of the offerings that you guys have here at Sakana. And we will have one bourbon drink.
Absolutely.
Just to check, just
to keep it going.
Quality control is the most important part of our job.
So we came here mainly because we like Sakana. We've been here with our families. I know I've been here with my brother. You've been here with your wife, our wives, our kids, and we've always enjoyed the menu. First and foremost, it's a nice vibe in Sakana. Everyone sort of has something on the menu they can enjoy, which we'll talk to Derek towards the end of the show. But certainly also just a phenomenal drink menu and alcohol, whiskey, all sorts of spirits to pick from.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about just both of you, your roles here at Sakana, and what you have noticed, from what's popular on from your drink menu.
Oh yeah.
So Kristen,
yes,
tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm the GM here. This is Juan, and he's basically my right hand. One of them at least. I've got a couple. I just always say I need babysitters. But we've done a lot with our wine list, our sake list, our bourbon, whiskey, cocktail menu. We've all been in the industry for too many years, and obviously we love it. But we have taken everything that we've learned over the years and kind of incorporated it into what we've done with our cocktail and liquor, beer, and wine menu. I've noticed, this is my first time doing anything Asian cuisine. I've always gotten a little hint of Japanese whiskeys in some of the other places that I've worked, but I've never invested a lot of time into learning about them until I came here. Obviously, it's Asian fusion. You have to know your stuff, right? It's one of my favorite things to talk about too. Same thing with sakis. I'd never done anything with sakis, and now I probably know more than I should. But it is fun to talk about, and it is interesting. You have so many people that love Asian cuisine. I don't see people, unless they've been in previous and we've had a conversation about it, that just come in and automatically order, Japanese whiskeys. I think it's one of those things like people go with what they're comfortable with. Angel's Envy, Basil Hayden, Four Roses, the basics. I feel like, which of course we keep our bourbons locked and loaded. We keep them stocked. But one thing I love about our cocktail menu is we have a bourbon flight where we offer, it's 4 different kinds of bourbon, half ounce of each, so you can kind of try a little mix and match. And I always tell people, if that's something you're going for, what's the bourbon that you usually go to? And then I recommend some of our Japanese whiskeys, some of them which, like you said, drink like scotches, and some of them drink like Canadian whiskeys, true whiskeys, and some of them drink like bourbons. So, it depends on what their favorite thing is, but it's nice to give everybody hey, trial and error. What do you like? What do you not like? Now next time you come in, which one did you like,
What do you think, based on some of the whiskeys that you have, or sakis for that matter? I'm sure you suggest and say, hey, you might want to try this. Which one are people most surprised if they end up liking more than they thought they would? And anyone in particular that?
Definitely sake. Sake, I think most people have a prerequisite that sake is, when you go to a hibachi restaurant and they're squirting that, hot sake or whatever that they use for cooking. That's like, would you rip shots of Marsala wine that you're cooking with? No. That's what it is, basically. It's just, but sake's so much more. It's so smooth. There's so many wonderful flavor profiles. And I love when my favorite thing is when someone says, I don't like sake, and I look at them and challenge accepted. We do a little tasting, and I talk a little bit about some of the sakis that we have that are very easy to drink, and they're wonderful with our cuisine. And by the end, they're buying bottles. So that definitely makes a difference, and I think it's nice to be able to do that. I mean, how many places can you walk into and be like, I want to try a little bit of everything. I don't know what I like, you know? And then it kind of also just gives you a different perspective on pairing and flavor profiles with
Yeah.
Asian cuisine, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, sake definitely drinks a little bit differently than wine. But just like whiskeys, there's a lot of concentration with sakes on nature. And, you know, it's the same thing with whiskeys. Concentration is on nature, and that's where they, you know, get all their ideas from nature, and that's their inspiration and things like that. So there are a lot of similarities that way, and they do take a lot of pride in how they're made and what they do and all that good stuff. So.
I do like your reference. I think the only time I've had sake is the hibachi squirt bottle. So.
I swear, I'm telling you.
And it's always warm. Not it itself, but it's a very it's heavy. At least my experience. Not a bad way, just a heavy, warm sort of. You feel it when you.
And it's a very specific flavor profile with
Yeah.
that too. I mean, it's definitely a fermented rice.
Yes.
You know, and there's so much more to sake. There's so many more flavors, and there's so many more things that go along with it. I just think like that specific, like the warm sake, I feel like is a very specific flavor profile.
Yeah.
And you can do sake cold or warm, but I think most people's experience is with warm sake.
Yeah.
Because that's I think it's kind of Americanized, but that's
Yeah.
definitely like it's definitely what we do. We walk
Yeah,
in and
yeah.
warm sake. But man, it's all of the sakes are phenomenal. You can drink them either cold or warm. It changes the flavor profiles completely. But I mean, cold sake definitely bring, you know, depending on how it's chilled, room temperature, you know, specific temperatures, definitely bring out some different flavor profiles. So it's fun.
So Juan, let me ask you a question. So if I came in here and I ordered one of those big boats of sushi, and I'm eating, what? And I said, you know, I really want to try to pair it with a nice Japanese whiskey. What would you tell me?
Well, the Japanese whiskey, the tradition that come from very long time, that Japanese are going to Scotland to try to learn the system, and the tradition is still there. We have a Hatsuki, a small batch whiskey that is absolutely fantastic. It is 100% malt whiskey, aged for several years. I think is very soft, very light in your palate, and soft enough for flora and vanilla. That goes well with pretty much anything that we have, especially our dancing tuna de lots, so or any of the sushi that we have here. Our sushi chef do a fantastic job on that. So if we go in whiskey, maybe I suggest to a flight keeping for the whiskey, Japanese whiskey that we have in our menu. We have being a Japanese sushi and the Asian fusion cuisine. We opted to have as much Japanese whiskey that we can find here in Ohio. You know how's the control here, the state control, all those things. So you have to, whatever they have, pretty much we have it here, and we try to do as much we can to get those here. So I keeping my reading, and I'm trying to do. My background in this business is a fine dining. It's the first time working for a year in sushi and Asian fusion. So if you asked me a year ago about sushi or asking me about Japanese whiskey, I can talk to you about Japanese whiskey, but my background more toward wines and high-end wines and stuff like that. So here we are right now, me and Kristen in the same place, and working together for the last 8-9 years, and we have the blessing from Derek, the owner, that we can do whatever we think is right for the guests that come here. And we are a small corporation, so we don't have a limit what we can do and not do. The guests that come into the door is the one who is keeping us open, so we have to do whatever it takes.
You're always, Joe and I talked about this, you know, always a friendly vibe when you come here. And people are, the servers are very friendly in offering, you know, their opinion on what, even the hostess, when you walk in, immediately are greeted. And you'd be surprised. It's a shame that you have to say that that's a rare thing anymore, but it is. And you walk to some restaurants and you almost feel like a burden. Does that sound right? You walk in, and here you never have that vibe.
I agree, and I think, I mean, and the challenges for staffing seem to be prevalent, especially nowadays. So when you come here, I mean, it's great service.
I always tell people we were super blessed with our staff. I mean, I know so many people in the industry. I mean, Juan and I have both been in the industry for 25 plus years, and everyone that we know in the industry is struggling to find good help. And we may not always have the amount of staff that we probably should have, especially for those busy nights, but lately it's been so inconsistent that, you know, we just the staff that we do have, I mean, they'll roll with the punches, and they'll work really well together. I mean, I don't think I've ever had any of the staff members say no to anything. They're always willing to come in. They enjoy work. They come, you know, I mean, so lucky.
Well, that's evident
So
for sure.
lucky.
I mean, because like we said, we come, we love the food, but we love the food, we love the spirits, but the entire vibe here and the environment is outstanding. So
Appreciate that.
I think me coming from fine dining is, I think right now, not just fine dining, everybody else is struggling to get. And what I learned how to do in this business back in fine dining for the last 25, 30 years, by working in the cruise ship back in the days, to come over here working for a lot of high-end restaurants over here with a great wine glaze to learn and do this, do wine training, wine tasting. You bring a vibe to the crew over here, and most of the crew here respect what I said and tell them how things need to be done and stuff like that. We have a young crew here, don't know much about much, but they do respect and do what we ask them to do, and that's the big part. They're welcoming, and the guest is the one who's paying, keeping us open here. It is something that welcome you and welcome everybody here. It is something that is hard to be done no matter what, and that's what a lot of people are struggling with right now. That people are not so welcoming because it's coming for to get a dollar to pay the bills. We are here to pay the bill, but we also know that the people that are coming through our door is the one who paying our bills. So we have to do whatever it takes.
That's right. They could spend their money anywhere, right? But they chose you.
They chose us, and
yeah,
I'm grateful
yeah,
for it.
yeah,
We're grateful
yeah,
for it.
yeah.
And I just tried to say that and say thank you for coming in. I appreciated you guys coming in today because that you making our day, and you make us be open one more day. So that is something to be appreciated, to be grateful for.
I think too, with everything that's happened with COVID, a lot of people are playing catch up right now. I mean, I feel like I'm always here, I feel like. But, you know, a lot of us put a lot of time into our careers and our families. And a lot of that was lacking for the last few years. And I feel like everybody's playing catch up, vacations and just graduation and parties and birthdays and celebrating each other. And so now I feel like a lot of people, they're going out and kind of playing catch up, but everybody's still so busy because they're playing catch up.
Yeah.
So when you do go out, it's like a little treat. And I know, like, I don't get out much. It's so sad, so sad. But when I do, like, there's specific places that I'll go because I know that I'm going to get good food, good service. It's not going to be like you said, I'm a burden. But I've gone to places where I'm just like, oh my God, how is this even still open? Like, what's happening? Why is nobody, like, it's crazy to me that that's a standard now. That's okay for people to not be personable.
Well, and I think franchises in particular, we've talked about this, Joe, offline, that, you know, local restaurants who can, you know, where an owner is involved or folks like you who are involved can help manage that experience. We've gone to restaurants that literally with staff are closing at like 8 o'clock just because they want to go home. And you almost want to say, boy, if the owner was here, would that be their go-to? No, but they're absent, you know, whatever, and the staff just, they want to go home.
It's funny.
You know, it's crazy.
But the opposite is true. We've been to other establishments where they close, let's say, at 11. It'll be at 11:45, and maybe they stop serving at 11, but it's like, listen, you finish. When you're done, you're done. Like, there's no hurry. And I think that is the vibe that you get here. Mm-hmm. I'm not telling everyone that you can stay later, just for the record. But I am saying that that welcoming, you know, whatever it takes is obvious. Like what you both brought up is evident in the way the staff is here at Sakana. So it's then when you know, beyond that, the food is off the charts. I mean, and like we were saying, you know, we've talked about before, there's a little something for everybody. And I think but it's all high quality, which is amazing.
So again, one more time, we're at 19300 Detroit Road here in Rocky River at Sakana. I also want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube page. It helps us build our audience. So don't just view our videos, subscribe. So we're going to start off with some whiskeys right here, Joe.
That's right. So it looks like we have a couple from Suntory. So can you guys talk to, let's look at the Suntory Whiskey Toki.
Suntory is pretty much the oldest distillery in Japan. That was founded in 1899 with the idea of one man, and was thinking about that Japan could do better and this could introduce people to spirits from the West. So for the Western wines, and he started importing. By 1907, they do a port, resulting in a pork wine, fortified wine that was made there with the flavors for Japanese people. By 1973, that was renamed to a sweet wine, the Akadama sweet wine. But they started building and developing the distillery, whiskey and malt distillery by 1923, producing the first whiskey by 1937, the launch of the Suntory whiskey in 1937. So they producing this exquisite Japanese whiskey that is absolutely fantastic.
So we should give this a taste?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We'll allow you to do the honors.
And I will say, the Suntory Toki specifically is probably the easiest to get a hold of. A lot of these whiskeys, I mean, just like, all bourbons, they come out specific times of the year.
I'm gonna smell this
Usually
too.
March or May. And, there are things like the Hakushu 12 year, Hibiki Harmony, the Yamazaki 12, which is out here, which we'll taste here in a minute. That it's really hard to get a hold of anymore, just because it's strictly allocated and it's made in specific amounts.
This is pretty flavorful.
In this Suntory whiskey, you're gonna have you're gonna have a clear gold color with the nose or basil, green apple, a little honey, and very short, sweet, spicy finish with a hint of vanilla, oak, and white pepper with that.
No, it's
That
a
is
really
good stuff.
It is, and it's interesting too because you do taste some of that peat, that
Scotchy kind of
that's-
taste, yeah.
But it's very mild compared to a lot of scotches that we've had.
I mean, I feel like the Suntory too. It's a middle of the road. I think it's very basic, and as far as the flavor profiles, and it's one thing that I've noticed with a lot of the Japanese, the gins, the vodkas, the whiskeys, the sakis. Unlike, I feel like wine, you can throw out different flavors, and it's a mishmash of all sorts of things, and everything's kind of combined. With a lot of the Japanese spirits in general, it's very specific flavor profiles that you can pull out. And a few of the things that are going to be uniform throughout all the whiskeys we're going to try is baking spices, cardamom, cinnamon, like white pepper, things like that, literally spices. And then, but also like vanilla, honey, like the sweeter caramel, sweeter things as well. Smokiness is a big thing as well. There's a little bit of smokiness on the end of this one, and there's a couple others that it really brings out it's impressive, especially like the Nika Taketsuru is my favorite as far as going with something smoky if you like things like that, or smoked cocktails and things.
That's it. Well, that seems to be the rage too. I mean, it was funny. We were at an establishment, and the first time we had a smoked old fashioned, and our wives are not huge bourbon drinkers. They like that because it gives a different flavor to it. It takes an old fashioned, which I love old fashions, but a smoked old fashioned is actually a different drink, and it's more palatable to a lot of people.
And it really does. It changes. Thank you. It does change the flavor profile. It's really cool how different cocktails made with different spirits can really alter the whole cocktail.
Like when we talk about Japanese whiskeys here, what's the best seller?
The best seller, I see the Nikas sell the most. I think the Nika whiskeys are very palatable and I think all Japanese whiskeys are pretty smooth. The Suntory, these lighter colors, drink a little more. They definitely have, like you said, the peatiness of the Scotch, but also I compare a couple of these, the Suntory and also Totori, to like Canadian whiskeys. Got a little bit of that on the end, almost a little chaotic at the end, like just as far as like, I just feel like it kind of, warming you up and like the flavors kind of exploding. But in comparison, the Nika coffee malt, the malt whiskey, and there's a grain whiskey as well. I think that those drink more like bourbons, and you can see as far as like the color difference even. I mean, The Nika coffee malt whiskeys are darker in color, caramel. You think caramel, honey, those kind of like Angel's Envy. I feel like is probably a great comparison as far as flavor profiles, at least. And then again, you know, Suntory. So I feel like the Nikas drink like bourbons. The Suntories, for the most part, drink more like Canadian whiskeys, and then or Irish whiskeys for that matter. And then you get into like the Taketsuda is very unique, super smoky. It's got a kick on the end, but you get that smokiness throughout the whole entire flavor. And then you get into, there's a couple, Kakutsudu, there's a Japanese Finest, small batch, and there's a couple of others, and that's a different company as well.
One of the things. We are doing here the Yamazaki single malt Japanese whiskey, 12 years of age. And also that is a good body with a plenty of Knox oil and sass.
So we did this one first then.
Exactly, we did that. And
Right.
I thought this was definitely smoother.
Yeah.
Definitely smoother.
You put a little bit of ice just to the cold, just open the flavors out of the whiskey and give you whole new flavors to it.
When we've done bourbon tastings, you know, we'll take the eye drop of you know, distilled water, just enough. It is amazing. I always like it on the rocks. Any bourbon whiskey I drink, and I do like it to soften it a little bit. I think you and I, Juan, talk. I don't think you do. I don't like really hot whiskeys and bourbons. I appreciate them.
Yeah.
It's just not my thing. I like smoother, something I can really sip, you know, and enjoy. Yeah.
This is really.
Oh, yeah.
This is very good. How does this pair, like when we like how popular is that?
I feel like people see it, I think it's intimidating because it's one of those things that they're not, again, not comfortable with. You're not 100% sure on something, you tend to steer clear of it. And because it only comes out certain times of year, a lot of places aren't able to get it. It's also a little more expensive because of its rarity. And
So somebody can't go in over to Minotti's and say, I want some of this. I mean, this is going to be really hard to get.
yeah, I mean, one of the last, and I think it was last year when I was asking specifically Minotti's here in Rocky River about it. They only, you know, it's only allocated once a year. They only got 3 bottles. You know what I mean? So that's what we're dealing with in the grand scheme of the hundreds of millions of people that drink bourbon and whiskey. 3 bottles isn't going to go very far.
Nope.
But I think it's expensive just because it is very, it's a very select bottle. And obviously it's delightful. But I think, you know, that kind of steers people away. Like, I'm not sure if, I've never had it. I'm not sure if I'll like it. I don't want to spend the money.
Right.
And that's another thing, like, although it is an expensive bottle, if somebody's not sure and they're leaning on it, like, I like to get little tastes. I mean, maybe not not drinking an ounce, but you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, at least get an idea.
Yeah.
Or I can talk you through, like, the flavor profiles. Like, I compare the Suntory whiskey to, you know, I mean, almost like Canadian Club or Seagram 7, that like the specific flavor profile of that Canadian whiskey. And then the Yamazaki is way smoother. It reminds me of almost like Maker's 46 type, you know, or Four Roses even, Buffalo Trace, those types of bourbons. Because I feel like those are things that people are familiar with.
Yeah.
So in comparison, then you're able to kind of like, oh yeah, I like those. Then you'll like this, you know.
It's very smooth.
It's extremely smooth. I mean,
I like this
way.
better, I think, than the Suntory.
I do too.
Yeah.
It's
is
the
a- this
mythical
is a
water
beginning.
source that's getting us. That's why I like it better. But the reality is, it is way smoother.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, and the Suntory whiskey is one that, like, I'll use that with, like, that's probably a better one for cocktails because you're mixing and it does have a little bit of that hit on the end. The Yamazaki, just the way it's made, and you know, it's aged 12 years. It is very smooth. The flavor is great, and as you can see, it's a very smooth, easy drink. That's something that I mean, if somebody said I'd like a Yamazaki 12-year with Coke, I'd do exactly what Juan has taught me to do, and that's you serve that bourbon or whiskey, and then let them ruin it. You know, don't drink that with. Please don't do that.
Please, no,
Please.
it's very simple. One of the things that working for this company is that we have the privilege to introduce you to the whiskey and give you a little taste. I'm going to give you an ounce or half an ounce, but I can give you a taste for you to see if you compare what you used to drink or what you drink. So we're working for a company that gives us that privilege that we can do this. So it is easy to introduce people and sell this whiskey, and just instead of selling Angel's Envy or any other was Buffalo Trace. So try something new, something different. You in an Asian restaurant, we had this Japanese whiskey, why not? We had this gin, why not? You drink gin and tonic, try this.
No,
mean, it
and
was
that's
absolutely fantastic.
And honestly, that's a huge selling point, because the reality is a lot of times people don't want to try something new because it is, I'm out dinner with my wife. I don't know if I want to try something new because we go out, not so often, and it's something different. So to be able to get a little taste and go, that is something I want to try, because that is something I will go back to for sure.
Absolutely.
All right.
So now we're going to move on to the Nika whiskeys. This is the
Taketsuru.
Takatsuru, pure
Yes.
malt. Tell us a little bit about this. And this is a, 43% alcohol. So it's not really that, a lot of these I've been noticing, they're all in the 86, 88 proof, yeah.
Pretty low.
Absolutely, and that probably makes them a little. That's part of the reason why I think that they're a little bit smoother than some of the American whiskeys and bourbons that we drink on a regular basis. I mean, look at like Jack Daniels. It's got that little kick there at the end. But I will say, like a lot of these companies, like we've said before, based their the way that they made their product based on either Western civilizations, things that were happening in the West, and they wanted to bring that over to Japan. Also, Scotland. I mean, that's this specific company, Nika. They really appreciated the way that the Scots made their Scotch and coffee stills, and that was the reason that these were made in coffee stills.
Oh, yeah.
And then the coffee still does give it a little more of a distinct creaminess almost, and the Taketsuru definitely. This is when I was telling you guys. It's a very specific. It still has that little like whiskey kick at the end, but it's very smooth through the drink, and you've got that smokiness. So it's definitely. I've used this in cocktails because it already has smokiness to it. I've used it in smoking cocktails. It's phenomenal just to give an old-fashioned a little bit of a kick. Same thing with a Manhattan. It's phenomenal just to drink by itself.
Yes.
But it's got a little, as far as Japanese whiskeys go, like I said, one of the things you'll get a lot of spice and the smokiness. And this one, the smokiness is very prominent.
So this is really, really good, and I taste. I was saying earlier that that it's peaty. I mean, it's very much like Scotch, but it's not as I don't know how to describe it. It's not as biting as Scotch is, at least for my palate. And it's smoother.
And it's funny you brought up the smokiness, because it's definitely prevalent in this.
Well, and then this is matured in sherry casks, so that's kind of the specific
Mellows it.
special way that this is made that gives it, makes it unique. But that the smoke, the barrel, almost like the coffee, tobacco, black pepper, and then you get into like dark fruits like plums, raisins. So those are kind of, those are the things that make this specific, the Taketsuru, unique.
And how does this rank as far as like popularity among patrons?
I don't think it's a favorite because of the smokiness. I think those who appreciate bourbon can appreciate these whiskeys in general. I don't think this is necessarily the easiest to drink if you're not normally a whiskey or a bourbon drinker. Bourbon drinkers definitely appreciate it. So anybody that goes around and drinks in the bourbon community will appreciate this and love this and think it's easy. And it the other thing is like the smokiness kind of brings something out as far as the cuisine. Any of the we have a couple of things that have mango, anything that's got a little sweetness to it, but also just the plain fish, this sashimi and the nigiri that we serve. That smokiness is going to bring a little bit to the palate as far as just eating the fish itself.
I could pair any of these with sushi.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Honest to God.
absolutely.
I mean, it would.
Well,
right?
I mean, those very, very specific, very chiseled almost, like specific flavor profiles that you can really pull out and accent the food big time. Moving on, this Nika malt is, I remember when I first found this bottle, and I think I pushed it all night on everybody that was dining in this building. I was like, are you looking for a whiskey, or are you looking for a bourbon? What do you usually drink? And this malt whiskey, and then moving on the Nika grain whiskey, these two are my favorites, and they're, in my opinion, the easiest to sell. Everybody's drinking bourbon now.
Yep.
Bourbon is huge. And these two whiskeys drink like a bourbon. Obviously, one is made with malt, the other made with grain. You know, so the malt whiskey is it still has it's still a little lighter as far as like I think of wine a lot. I did a lot with wine, so I think light bodied, medium bodied, full bodied.
Wow.
So this is probably medium bodied in comparison to the Suntory Toki, or to even the Yamazaki and the Nika Taketsuru.
Go ahead. I'm
This
sorry.
was introduced to me by my buddy Jim Meslovich, thank you. He bought me a bottle of this, and right out the gate, loved it. So I was, obviously pretty happy it was a part of the selection here, because you are right, there is a creaminess to it, and it's super smooth.
It's like, I feel like if you like this, you're gonna love the grain whiskey. You know what I mean? It's like it just gets better and better.
Yep.
I like
but,
this.
Specifically again, that the coffee still gives it a specific texture.
How readily available is this one?
Actually, these two are very readily available.
Good.
You can get them.
I'm gonna get some of
I'll
this.
tell you what, I'm surprised. These are two. I've never had a problem getting them. Specifically from Minotti's and Rocky River.
Go to Minotti's for all your liquor purchases.
That's for you, Joe.
Joe, I miss you. We tell them all the time.
Like I said, we are in the Asian fusion. We have this whiskey, so I don't use this whiskey to introduce people to the same flavor that you know, but with a variation of the whiskey that we have available here. Because we want to introduce you to different things. Just
Absolutely.
To do that. Like I said, with the French 75, that you have a variation.
The Nika coffee.
The Nika coffee, gin, the stuff that I really use for those.
So Juan, this is, so we'll try this first. This is the Manhattan, that one.
We'll go that.
And which whiskey is in this?
It's the Nika malt.
Nika malt. That's the one that's what we just said we liked.
Yes.
Okay, let's give this a try. I got to say, this is smoother than other Manhattans I've had.
Oh,
To
God.
be honest with you, the other Manhattans I've had are a little more biting.
And that all comes down
This
to
is
the bourbon.
smooth.
But this is definitely.
It's all coming down to where you choose to do that. Like I said, we're just trying to introduce the people for what we have here that you haven't tried. So why don't try one of the cocktails? I said that the old-fashioned Manhattan, we don't change it on the menu. We may take it off on the menu for one season, whatever, or 3 months. But we're still making it. But we're making these Manhattans with the Japanese whiskeys, unless you want to choose a different higher bourbon, whatever it is. But I think it's worth to try this with the Japanese whiskey because you are in an Asian restaurant. It's an Asian fusion restaurant. We have these whiskeys available that you can get almost nowhere. So we have it. Why don't try it?
No, and it's a
Good
it's a
stuff.
new take on a
Absolutely.
Manhattan, and that's what I see. This is why we're here. This is what it's all about. Trying and doing something different, and really.
Manhattans and old fashions are obviously very popular bourbon
Yep.
cocktails, and Manhattans I feel like are very specific. You know what I mean? I think that old fashions are, in general, easy. Be nice about it. Are way easier to drink. Specifically because you're adding simple syrup, you're kind of easing it up a little bit, and then that orange peel really just kind of opens everything up for you. But it's not as there's not as much punch to it.
Right.
And then in general, like you guys were talking about how smooth it is, and we talked about the creaminess that are in all of the Nikas. I mean, that really just makes the cocktail great.
I got to say too, we did a show at Chez Francois, and it was amazing. Like one thing we learned, at least I learned, I think you did too.
Oh,
Bitters, of just the variety of bitters, right? And it
It's-
seems
it's-
obvious,
it's-
but as
not all the
as
same.
Matt was making drinks, I'm like, boy, I'm really behind in my understanding of the bitters game, really.
Right?
And I started buying different and just adding different
How
flavor
fun
of
is that?
chocolate. Oh my God, so it's so entertaining. You can make your own drinks.
Exactly,
really.
and that's why we were saying, like, this old fashioned is different than any one that we've had at any of our, and it's got so much flavor to it.
Absolutely.
It really is. This is definitely something to try when you come here at Sakana.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And for the viewing audience, Juan will literally make this and sit down with you and make sure that you really enjoy your drink. It's a perk here at
I
Sakana.
won't let you fail.
I won't let you. Have you tried the old fashioned?
No, let's try the old fashioned. So is it the same whiskey,
So which
Juan?
We used to sing whiskey too as well. We used to do the malt.
Cheers.
as well.
Cheers.
Again, smooth.
And those two cocktails are never gonna die. Those
Yeah.
classic cocktails
Exactly.
that the new generation are drinking. The old generation was still drinking it. When the new generation get old, they're gonna still drinking, and the kids gonna be still drinking it too. So
Exactly.
Really
this
So-
classic cocktail never gonna die.
Nika coffee malt whiskey in both a Manhattan and
Buying
an
some
old
of that.
fashioned. I mean, and
Let-
it's a really, that's a smooth drink, and like I said, a different take on something that we've had, a different take on great classic cocktails. So I definitely applaud you. This is outstanding.
Juan, if I came in and wanted to do with using Japanese whiskey, a Sazerac, what would you recommend? Which one would you say?
I think that this Yamasaki here would be one of the best ones to be the Sazerac.
Yeah. I agree. That would be a nice taste because it's such a simple drink. Yeah.
I think it might be interesting too with that Nikotaka too, with that little smokiness to it.
Yeah. Because you're wondering how it would blend with the absinthe, which can be
And it's got
strong,
that,
but can't overpower the yeah.
But I think that's going to be probably a perfect match this one over here.
That'd be
I think.
interesting. So what are we trying next?
No, this is my favorite one. This is the Nika Coffee Grain Whiskey, and this one is, if you like the malt, you're gonna love the grain whiskey. This has definitely got
I smell this thing.
even more,
It's this
I'm gonna
one.
do it.
yeah, it's correct. It's more pink red label. So now this one is gonna have even more caramel and vanilla notes to it, almost like honey. Let me see. Chamomile tea is what I think of, and it's like a specific, like it's that warm, fuzzy. Let's see, like honey, cinnamon, cardamom, almost. Oh God, I love it. It's a little bit more on the full-bodied side, so this one I think drinks even more so like a bourbon. But I feel like for
Yeah.
bourbon lovers, man, I mean, this is one that this would be. It would blow your mind in an old fashioned or a Manhattan. However, specifically an old fashioned, I think. But it is almost like it's almost super sweet, and I think that
It's
this
sweet, but it's a little hotter than this one.
It is, and it's
Yeah.
not. It's funny because I was looking, and it's a 90 proof, so it's not
that much.
ridiculous,
But
but
it's
it's got a little more heat.
Not
to
a
it.
bad way, but just you taste this much more than this one.
Yeah.
This is also made 100% with corn.
This one is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's going to get a little bit of hotter too
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But you have the nose of that, the chamomile, you have the palate is on a sweet, thick syrup. It'll be a balance of the vanilla.
These just
I definitely
You
taste the
definitely-
vanilla.
So
You
I
definitely
did
taste
too.
it. You definitely taste it.
Absolutely. And even with a little bit of heat, I like that. It gives it. This is
Reminds
you
definitely
that
more
it's
flavorful.
artificial.
Exactly.
Reminds you that it's
You don't
whiskey.
Put some
forget.
more in
Yeah.
there. We're going to move on to the Totori blended whiskey, and as I was saying earlier, had a little bit of a sneak sip thanks to Juan.
Which is totally against the rules of suburban bourbon.
And
You
this,
know this.
and this is super sweet, I think, in a good way. I taste honey in it.
So it's a honey, little caramel, vanilla.
Yes.
So I've tasted nothing because I didn't do a sneak sip.
So do your sip.
All right, here we go. Wow. That
Isn't that
and
good?
It definitely has smooth, sweet, and I definitely taste those as well.
So you taste the peatiness, this is typical with the Japanese
Yep.
whiskeys,
Yeah, it's smoky.
for a second, and then it gets right into smoky, then sweet, and then almost honey vanilla.
I know.
That is an interesting taste.
This is a very tasty. What is this again? The name?
It's called Totori whiskey. Now this is one that you wouldn't find it in Minotti's. I actually had to find out about this through one of the distributors and have it transferred to
Good selection
Minotti's
one.
for me.
Very good.
So you worked your angles.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's I will say this about the distributors: Heidelberg, Wine Trends, and Southern Glaciers. And Vintage are the four that I use most prominently, and I got really lucky again with my sales reps. They're phenomenal. They teach me something new every day. They're very educated and have all of the information for me, and they're always willing to do tastings or find out about it. I mean, there's always somebody that's specific to this whiskey or this sake or this wine that can give more information.
Sure.
So it's nice to have those areas of expertise readily available.
And something interesting about this one too is also aged for 3 years in the bourbon barrel.
This one is
This one is
in a bourbon barrel.
in the American bourbon barrel 3 years, just to bring the aromas of American oak.
It's don't you? I mean, I would encourage anyone watching this to get some of this somehow, either a bottle or a
Or
drink.
talk to Kristen and work her angles.
Because it's hard to describe that you go through a series of tastes with one taste of the alcohol, right? It's
Exactly, with
it's
one
peaty
whiskey.
to sweet to vanilla. It's really unique. This is really, really good.
No, I agree, and I've never seen it for obvious reasons, but I agree because normally when you have that peaty taste, it's prominent.
It
and
mutes
stays.
everything else. Yeah.
So this is the Hatozaki small batch. Now Hatozaki, the one that I cannot
Think
find
you want?
right now is the finest. Both are. It is 100% malt whiskey aged for several years in bourbon, sherry, and Mizunara oak, which is a Japanese white oak.
And that's this one here.
Correct, and that's again bringing it back to the Japanese culture and nature. This one, as well as the Hatozaki finest whiskey, drink more like a Scotch. So when you talk about
Oh, yeah.
the
It's-
peatiness
it's
and the
Scotch.
smoky and basically the peatiness and that peatiness, oak, smoky, all of those flavors kind of all together is what in my head I think of like Oban and Lafroig, like we were talking about before, those Scotch, the specific Scotch flavor profiles. And this is a perfect example of when, the Japanese fell in love with the distillation process that the Scots came up with for Scotch, and they incorporated this into their whiskeys. Like that. That's
If you would have taken the label off and put anything
McClellan. Or
exactly.
something. Yeah.
I honestly would have said I wouldn't have known. It is this. If you like Scotch, Hatozaki is
Yes.
definitely one you should try because it is. But it's also pretty mild from that perspective. It's an
very
easy
mild, very
easy drinking Scotch-like drink.
I agree. I'm not a fan of Scotch. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the taste and the process. This is, for me, drinkable. I like it. I mean, it's a good taste to it. Yeah.
No, I agree with you. But
and even the coloring is similar.
The peatiness and the smokiness is prevalent. You get that peaty flavor, and then I do like the smokiness of it.
That oak is from the Tohoku forests, so you get heavy burlap, leather, mushroom, and that's specific to the terroir there.
But the most important question, what mythical waters was this created from? Do we have
Let's see.
because we know the Tottori Springs for Tottori.
Yep.
Yamazaki's the Rikyu no Misu.
This one doesn't tell me which waters were used. All I know is the Tohoku forests.
And you've done a fantastic job of correlating these Japanese whiskeys to things that people know, whether they're Canadian whiskeys, bourbons, or scotches. And quite honestly, this is so much like a scotch, I wouldn't know the difference. You relabel it, no one would know. What we've done.
for the heck of it.
I'll say this: if you come to Sakana, I think the idea of doing a flight is fantastic because the
Absolutely.
reality is what we've done is essentially that, and it's, whether it's funny. It's depending on what I'm interested in having to drink that night will determine which one I like because they're all unique. I think that I walked away with the Yamazaki being probably like my favorite, but I mean the Tottori has its own flavor profile that depending on the night I may go with that, and I think
I'm with the Nika malt.
I do too. I do.
I love this.
My one.
It is,
Well,
and I think the other thing too is the Nika Old Fashioned and the Nika Manhattan is a different Old Fashioned Manhattan than I've ever had.
I think what it says is to change your, expand your profile. When you walk into a restaurant and Sakana's like one of these that go with what they recommend. If they say that this is the way we make our Manhattans, then go with that and give it a try. I mean, the worst that happens, you have a bad drink. Big deal, but you can expand your palate a little bit, and Sakana is one of those places you can walk in and do that. Well, Krista and Juan both, I mean, we can't thank you enough. This has been a really educational experience, quite frankly, and a place we enjoy to come to anyway.
Exactly.
And I think, and hopefully one of the goals with Suburban Bourbon is expanding our profile, expanding our palates a little bit.
Yep.
Certainly, I think accomplished that today.
Oh,
And-
in tenfold. I
Right.
mean, quite honestly, this has been an education. So thank you both very much. And whether it's the menu, whether it's the spirits, this is a place to come to because
It's just me.
or it's just Kristen,
Or Kristen.
Kristen and Juan. But I will say, like, whether it's the menu's outstanding, the spirits are outstanding, but the service is off the charts, and that's something that, like we were talking about, unfortunately in our current climate, isn't always there. So if you're looking for a night out with a family or even a date night, this is a place to go.
We're at 19300 Sakana, which is 19300 Detroit Road in Rocky River, right off the highway. A lot to do around here. You can come here for dinner, drinks, and walk around. There's a lot of other restaurants and bars. Come here. It's going to be worth the trip.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys coming in today. And
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
guys.
Thank you,
Like I
Krista.
said,
Thank you, Juan.
Like I said, in fine dining, if you, what's the last bottle you taste? A wine. The same thing with the whiskey. What's the last whiskey you taste? Let me introduce you something new. Thank you for coming in. We appreciate that very, very
Thank
much.
you. You guys
Thank you.
have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you for coming.
So while we're here at Sakana, we wanted to take an opportunity, as we always do, not only to get to know the unique whiskeys and bourbons, and here, of course, with a lot of Japanese whiskeys, we also like to meet the owners of these great bars and restaurants, and we're going to have a chance to talk to Derek Stoller here today.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the sushi restaurant business.
Well, funny story. When I was in college, I was just looking for a part-time job, and I got a job at a sushi restaurant as a sous chef in the kitchen. Did that for about a year, and I always kind of marveled at the bartender that was working because a good-looking guy, and he just had the job. I mean, he had women flock to his bar, and I'm just like, man, like I'm a 19-year-old kid, from the country, going to college for the first time, being in a big, a city for the first time. I'm like, man, I got to get into that profession. So I kind of piggybacked off of him at the end of the shifts, and I'd ask him about, certain alcohols behind the bar, why do you do this, why do you do that? And then I got really into it. And then in the summer, right after that first year in the Asian kitchen, I got an internship with Anheuser-Busch. So I moved to Florida for 2 years on an internship with Anheuser-Busch and was part of their beverage program and kind of learned more about the ins and the outs of the hospitality industry as a whole. So I did that for 2 years. I moved back to Ohio when I was 21 and finished my degree at Bowling Green. At the same time though, I needed a winter bartending job. So I went back to the restaurant that I was cooking in and I started to bartend. And then when I got into that, I really learned more of the Asian style cuisine, sushi, the different fish, the preparation, and kind of marveled at how much love and respect is actually put into the cuisine because it's a little different than your American restaurants. I mean, your sushi chefs, they literally have a way with the fish. I mean, every part of the fish they use, they try to use. They're very, they take pride in everything they do, from what they're putting on the plate to how they do it in the back of the house. So then I'd say about 9 years ago, I had an opportunity. The place I was working at long term, the gentleman that owned it was actually going to move out west to seek better care for his elderly parents, and he approached me about doing a seller finance ownership of the sushi restaurant. And kind of being, I had just moved to Cleveland, and my wife had just gotten a great promotion, a great job in the city of Cleveland. So I was coming here with a fresh start, looking for a different job. But when that opportunity kind of approached myself, I talked to my wife about it. I'm like, you know, this is something new to us, entrepreneurship, but at the same time, we know the industry, we know the restaurant, so let's go ahead and roll the dice on it. So we actually took a turnkey ownership of my other restaurant in Toledo, Ohio, and we worked hard for 5 years. The first couple years were pretty rough. It was definitely new to us. Being a couple broke college kids, my business partner and I, owning a restaurant, we found out real quick that, man, usually you should have a backbone before you jump into restaurant ownership. So first 2 years were rough on us, but we turned the restaurant around. We really built the brand. We increased the sales, and then a year and a half ago, we had the opportunity. Actually, 2 years ago, after COVID hit, the commercial real estate kind of dropped a little bit. This spot became available, and it was kind of since I was already living in Cleveland, I was commuting to Toledo every day. Yeah. This spot became available, and from the moment I walked in, I loved it. Yeah. Like, we looked at the layout of the restaurant, and I loved it because I could separate the bar and the lounge side from the dining side. And that was my biggest draw. Having 3 kids, my wife and I appreciate when we go out to dinner. When we have our 3 kids, we don't like to sit and watch people, sit at the bar and booze and be loud and stuff. We just like to have family time. So this restaurant gives you the opportunity. If you have your kids, you can go or a more quiet side. But my wife and I, when we're by ourselves, we like to be the loud ones at the bar. We like to sit at the bar. We like to talk to the bartender. We like to, have house cocktails. We like to try new things. So, so this place, if you're coming on a date night, you can come with your spouse or your partner, and you sit down and have that intimacy of not worrying about kids running around, poking you with chopsticks while you're trying to enjoy a drink or dinner.
So that being said, we're here today to try some of the Japanese whiskeys that you have. So how do those sell? Like, what have you seen over the time that you've been in this business?
Well, with the Japanese whiskeys, 10 years ago, for me to get a Japanese whiskey in Toledo would be impossible. Yeah. And then, with the popularity and the boom of the bourbon industry, I think that helped the Japanese, distilleries. So they kind of have been moving into the market. You can only drink it so much, Knob Creek, Buffalo Trace, Bland's, before you kind of want to try something different. Mm-hmm. So what's nice with the Japanese whiskeys, and they've kind of moved into the market a little bit. So your bourbon lovers are kind of getting outside of the box a little bit, especially when they're coming into a establishment that's an Asian cuisine. And most of the Japanese whiskeys, they're double distilled. They're meant more for if I'm going to pair, I'm going to recommend the Japanese whiskey. With a lot of our salmon, especially the smoked salmon. So it's given the bourbon lover something different to try. And it's and they're unique too. The packaging is really attractive on all the Japanese distilleries. So they're definitely eye catchers when they're back behind the back bar.
Well, it's interesting too. This particular location, by the way, 19300 Detroit Road here in Rocky River. There's not a lot of it's not like there are other sushi restaurants necessarily that come to mind. Or this cuisine is. And I think you even have it on your signs, a fusion, so you come here and you're going to get something unique here in the area, I think. And I know that we've been here with our families. Yep. And, from my brother who will come here and probably order, 20 different kinds of sushis, to my daughter who just wants some noodles and some, you really have everything, for every sort of palate. Yeah,
with us too. I mean, that's kind of, I've always joked when we first got into restaurant entrepreneurship, I always told my business partner, I'm like, the best, wouldn't it be nice if there was a restaurant that, you could take the top 2 menu items off of this menu to this menu, and collaborate and put it all on one menu. So when we kind of devised our menu here, and that's what we kind of did, we have a lot of different Asian flavors from all over. A lot of our Thai stuff is what's kind of in right now, the pad keemao, the pad Thai. But we also have some more, some Chinese staples that, are, orange chicken and General Tso chicken that, are fan favorites that, you don't want to forget about. So we kind of really have married a bunch of different, styles of, even the cooking techniques between, Szechuan style, Hunan style, Thai style. We've married everything into one menu. The sushi menu, though, we've kind of modernized it, and made it a little user friendly for somebody that's really not into sushi, because it's something that I think sushi as a whole kind of scares people sometimes because they think it's just all raw. Well, we've made our sushi menu. We have 14 rolls that are cooked, so there's nothing that's going to be raw in there. But for us here, what we wanted to do was we wanted to have some specialty, Japanese fish that nobody else in the city has. And we've, and luckily with some of my vendors, we've accomplished that. Some of the raw cuts that we get in are the best quality cuts you're going to get anywhere. And we pay a premium for it, but in my opinion, it's worth it. It definitely pays off when it comes to what's being put in front of our guests.
What's an example of the fish that you get that's special?
Right now, our special, we have olive flounder. It's a flatfish, and they're very unique because they're only about 2 to 3 pounds. Harame is going to be kind of like we're going to see it more on a Japanese menu, but they're 2 to 3 pounds. The sushi guys, they hate them. After they fillet them down, we only get about, I think the two that we brought in, we got a total of maybe 1.5 pounds of protein from. So they're super expensive. They're very tedious to break down, but it's something that you're not going to get anywhere else. Another specialty fish we get in is hiramasa, and we're the only place that gets it in the city of Cleveland. I special order. It takes 3 weeks to put a tag on it to get it to us, because they don't catch very much of it. Nobody really fishes for it. And then another fish that we have all the time is our, you'll see it labeled as white tuna on other sushi menus, which white tuna is just kind of a generic term, which really is no white tuna per se. But ours is actually walu, which is from it's caught fresh from Hawaii, and we get that overnighted to us once a week. And the walu is, it's fantastic. I mean, it's next level with the flavor profile of that particular cut.
I've just expanded what I'm getting here.
I know.
Well, we can't thank you enough for your hospitality and bringing us here today. We enjoyed tasting a lot of the various whiskeys, and certainly every time we've ever been here, Derek, you treat people, your staff treats people with hospitality. Like you feel like you're coming in, you're attended to. Kristen, who we talked with earlier, is phenomenal, I think, in terms of kind of setting that vibe, if you will. So you're doing it right here, and we encourage everyone to come out and visit.
Oh, absolutely,
Sakana for a great dinner.
And I would say too, from when you brought up the way the menu's built, and obviously you did add a bunch of stuff that we're going to have to come back and try. But the way the menu's built, it's a little something for everyone. In our family, and it's funny. It's like like you were saying, like my wife and I, we love sushi. Actually, and one of my daughters does. The other daughter, actually, I think the first time she ever had it was here. Yeah. I mean, and it was, she's now entertaining it, but it's also nice to know that you can go somewhere where there's way more options than that.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off that, even last night I sat down, I had a friend come in from Pittsburgh, brought his 2 young daughters and his brother-in-law and his girlfriend in, and kind of, going off what you're saying, is there something for everybody? Right. When they ordered their food and their food came to the table, I kind of looked at the table. His youngest daughter had sweet and sour chicken, Chinese staple. His oldest daughter had macaroni and cheese and French fries. His plate, he had pad kee mao, which is a Thai dish, and a California roll, which is the most basic of sushi rolls. The brother-in-law had a sashimi combo, which is kind of like the what we like people to get, because that's kind of a representation of what we're trying to accomplish. And then the girlfriend, she had kung pao chicken, which is another it's a Szechuan style Asian dish. So it's a little bit of everything on that table.
You should. That's
you got
what
it, that's what you have to do, right? I mean, to be successful.
Did you take a picture and put it out there? This is what we do.
My buddy, he travels around. He works for NASA. And he travels around a lot, and I told him, like, that whole menu, you're gonna get a California roll. Like, come on, like, you're definitely a little more. Your horizon should be expanded a little bit more than just a California roll. But it was just kind of funny to see that how different that whole table's culinary choices were.
And I do think too. I mean, and this is, you brought up the way this is set up, but I mean, it is a fantastic layout, and for whether it's like you said, whether it's a date night or a family night, it fits all you are able to handle all those situations perfectly. I mean,
They even
This
have
is
a
great-
patio. I mean, we're kind of, it's over our shoulder here, but an outside patio to sit as well,
Yeah.
and huge wrap. We'll show some pictures on the website, but certainly it wraps around. One of the largest bars I've seen in a long time for sushi. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's absolutely huge. Thank you. Thank you for your
Not a problem. Thank you
hospitality.
for coming.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Not a
Derek.
problem.
Thank you, Derek.